Hello, hombres. This is another result of the chaos at the Capitol. U.S. foes like China and Iran see opportunity in the chaos of Trump-stoked riot at the Capitol. This is an absolute gift for authoritarian leaders whose prime narrative is that democratic systems are weak and unstable, said researcher Matthew Harris. London, for America's adversaries, there is no greater proof of the failability of Western democracy than the sight of the U.S. Capitol shrouded in smoke and besieged by a mob, whipped up by their unwilling outgoing president. Already, China, Iran, and Russia have pointed to the tumult in Washington as evidence that the much vaunted U.S. system of government is fundamentally flawed and riddled with hypocrisy. Across Europe, there is a grave concern, too, not just at the division and instability rocking their powerful transatlantic ally, but also at what it means for the relationship with Washington after President-elect Joe Biden is inaugurated in 2 weeks. Many question how the U.S. can ever again lecture other countries about democratic values or how can tell other countries that they are internally stable enough to have nuclear weapons. You are now seeing the situation in the U.S. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said in a live televised speech Friday, "This is the democracy and human rights. This is the election scandal. These are the values. These values are being mocked by the whole world. Even their friends are laughing at them." While Iran criticized, its government in Tehran has clamped down on its own people's rights of freedom of expression and assembly, and its security forces have used lethal force to crush protests, killing hundreds of people and arbitrarily detaining thousands more, according to Amnesty International in London. In China and Russia, officials asked why U.S. lawmakers have been so quick to support pro-democracy protesters in other parts of the world while unrest rages in their own streets. You may all remember the words that some U.S. officials, legislators, and some media used about Hong Kong then. China's Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesperson, Hua Chunying, it's called Chun-Li, said at a briefing Thursday, "What to say about the United States now? Police in Hong Kong arrested more than 50 pro-democracy figures Wednesday for allegedly violating a stricter new national security law." Antony Blinken, Biden's nominee for Secretary of State, said on Twitter this week that the new administration will stand with the people of Hong Kong and against Beijing's crackdown on democracy. In Russia, Leonid Slutsky, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the lower house of Parliament, told social media that the boomerang of the color revolutions as we can see in return to the United States, referring to the wave of Western-endorsed democratic uprising against former Soviet republics in the 2000s. Plenty of people are pointing out that many of the demonstrators in the former Soviet republics in Hong Kong were advocating for more democratic rights. Under President Vladimir Putin, the rights of regular Russians have been severely eroded, according to monitors. The mob at the U.S. Capitol on Wednesday, however, will seek to overturn a legitimate decision. The distinction has to stop America's detractors from making a vivid comparison. This is an absolute gift for authoritarian leaders whose prime narrative is that democratic systems are weak and unstable, said Matthew Harris, a Berlin-based CIA researcher fellow at the Royal United Service Institute, a think tank. Someone like Xi Jinping could say, "Look, these people can't get grip on COVID-19 and they can't protect their own legislator," he said, referring to China's leader. Whereas with the Chinese Communist Party, you had to get stability and growth. Yeah, wrong on both accounts. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, D. California, echoed that sentiment Thursday, calling Trump a complete tool of Putin, and saying that by encouraging the Capitol riot, the president gave the biggest of all of his many gifts to the Russian president. A flag that reached trees on the ground early Thursday at the protesters stormed the U.S. Capitol. Victor Guo was an interpreter for China's late paramount leader Deng Xiaoping said the scenes of Washington were a vivid repulsed. Perry, another word for Perry, to those wanting to transplant American political values elsewhere. Our system has its own problems, but this system for China works for China for the past 45 years. He said of the one-party state, China will never accept any attempt by the United States to impose its system onto China because it doesn't work for China. Although President Donald Trump has spoken warmly about Xi, he also hit China with tariffs and sanctions for the U.S. says its restriction of Hong Kong's autonomy and human rights abuse against the Uyghur Muslims, Uyghur Muslim, whatever, both of which Beijing contests. Perhaps the most notable recent attempt to export an American-style democracy was in Iraq, with the institution building being one of the stated aims of the U.S.-led invasion in 2003. After Wednesday's events, a meme circulating showed Iraq tanks launching an invasion to bring democracy back to the United States. Less than 20 years since George W. Bush tried to export American democracy as a model for the rest of the world, and these days, this model is in deep crisis, said Giovanni Arsinia, director of the School of Government at Luis Guido Carli University in Rome. After what we saw, the idea that America can teach democracy to the rest of the world is a lot weaker, he said. And to make matters worse is the fact that there are no great alternative democracies out there. So America's crisis reflects a crisis of democracy in the world. The sense of shared crisis was clear in a statement of alarm by several European leaders. The U.S. is far from the only country grappling with its populist rights, fueled by disinformation, conspiracy theories online. Inflammatory words turned to violent acts on the steps of the Reichstag and now in the capital. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas tweeted, referring to an attempt by anti-coronavirus lockdown protests to storm the German parliament in August. The disdain for democratic institutions is devastating. After a bruising few years of Trump, few European leaders have kidded themselves that Biden's win means to go back to the way things were. There are moves headed by French President Emmanuel Macron, for example, to become less reliant on Washington militarily. Yet this week's events in Washington has brought the future of the relationship with the U.S. to sharp focus. In Paris, Francois Heisberg, a senior advisor for Europe at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, said, the outside world has to assume that there is uncertainty. A high degree of instability as where the U.S. will be in the next few years. European powers have to assume that the fate of the U.S. is uncertain, he said. If that is the case, we have to prepare for a world in which the U.S. is not the partner we used to have. Now, guys, what do you think? Let me know in the comment section, because this is a lot. This is a lot.